over 20 years. And it's actually got worse during that time. So
I have to jump in there, Mr. Bagraim. You're saying that BBBEE has failed. Which parts of BBBEE have failed when you live in a country where the majority are black Africans? And if you're saying the numbers are harsh, how exactly are they harsh in terms of the numbers? So if you're saying there's 80% black people, then surely 80% of the workforce in companies should be exactly that.
Yes, so that's why it's failed. It should be, because we've had 25 years of this. If you've had 25 years and you keep doing the same experiment and you're saying that the workforce is still not reflecting the demographics, then that's failure by anyone's imagination, not a democratic...
Guys, so the whole country is going haywire now with this employment equity court case that the DA has actually just launched now against, I think this would be against the ANC's, Employment Equity Amendment Act. And, I think the DA's policy guy here, Michael Bagraim, I think he's actually has become a tool devised by the DA to really push for this. He sounds really so, speaks with so much clarity in his articulation of why, BBBEE laws have failed in South Africa for the last 20 years. He actually argues that there's been a lot of experimentation of the same law, these whole quotas, and I think I'll be making another video soon about the National Employment Association of South Africa, BOSS. He actually also argues that this new stipulation actually shouldn't be happening because the government should try to stay out of business. That business requires a certain kind of frivolity or freedom to be able to make the profit and also expand in such a way that they can actually give people jobs and probably grow the economy and reduce the unemployment rate that's now, according to DA's Bagraim, almost to the tune of 42%. And so this is where the whole argument actually lies now at the moment. And in this interview here with this, I think this would be an SABC journalist, I think it got a little heated here, where she tried to really counter his argument about the failure of this BBBEE kind of laws in South Africa. And, he actually kind of responded that that's really why BBBEE has failed in South Africa. It's still producing the same results. And, he actually argued in the last video that, trying to do the same thing and expecting different results might actually be accrued to insanity. And so he thinks that this is one argument the DA actually is trying to come with from this perspective, that, they've been doing the same thing and it's actually been bringing the same failed results. But why not try something else? The National Employment Association of South Africa, the boss, they actually also argues that, in terms of transformation, right? Transformation has been achieved in state government offices or government parastatals, so to speak. But that he argues that now that the transformation has happened there, you can see the amount of breakage in government-owned agencies and all of that. And so as a result of that, this whole thing with quotas and conducting business on spreadsheets isn't something that would lead South Africa to its promised land, so to speak, based on its potential. But anyway, I think before we get into the interview between Bagraim and this SABC journalist, I think it would be smart to really listen to how President Ramaphosa himself articulates this Employment Equity Amendment Act. In my last video, I tried to explain how, it actually targets, I think, some 18 sectors in the country and compels companies, I think, employing above 50 employees or more to have a compliance certificate, without which there wouldn't be meaningful, business or meaningful relationship with the tender acquisition processes in South Africa. And so let's quickly listen to President Ramaphosa, how he understands the reason and the need for this Employment Equity Amendment Act. And I'll be back with just a few analyses.
ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa believes the DA is misrepresenting the Constitution in relation to the Employment Equity Act. The DA believes these, what it calls race laws, are a barrier to investment into the South African economy. But Ramaphosa pointed out that the Act is there to address the imbalances of the past.
I must go and read our Constitution very clearly and very carefully, because what we are seeking to do is to transform our country and to ensure that what apartheid bequeathed us is something that we correct. So the Employment Equity Act is aimed at doing that. But as any organization is entitled to, they are entitled to go to court, and I haven't had their full complaint. I'd like them to come and explain to me what grudge they have about transformation.
Yeah, you've heard it from the president himself. So he actually still argues in the frame of transformation that South Africa has to transform itself from what has been bequeathed it from the apartheid days. And so that's why this equity law is actually here to try to achieve that. Although the DA is now contesting today in court, saying that this is actually kind of like social engineering. I think Bagraim even actually argued that this might actually be almost like the racial engineering that was practiced under the Nats. And so it's really been challenged. Let's just quickly listen to this. I think this is a really fierce interview between this SABC journalist and DA's Labour. She calls him Shadow Labour Minister for the DA, Michael Bagraim. Really go back and forth on this whole thing and why BEE might not be the best for South Africa, or why BEE has failed in South Africa for the past 20 years. And share your thoughts in the comments.
Shadow Labour Minister Michael Bagraim, who will speak about this, because in the first instance, we know about our country's history and the purpose of a broad-based black economic empowerment. What exactly is it about 15A of the Employment Equity Amendment Act that the DA has a particular issue with, and what does it say?
Thank you. Yes, we do come from a very broken past, and we do need redress, that's for sure. And the DA has always said that we need that redress. But then you need someone that's going to bring the redress in, not legislation that we've had now for over 20 years. And it's actually got worse during that time. So in fact, that is a mitigated disaster, an absolutely unmitigated disaster we've seen from the legislation. So what Minister Meth is now doing is she's now turning the screws tighter to see if the bad experiment can become a good experiment. Now that's a sign of madness, in the sense that you can't take something and try and make it better by making it harsh. The bottom line is 15A is setting hard and fast, cut in the stone laws. So whether they don't take into account anything. And when you ask Minister Meth, how did she get those quotas? How did she get those ridiculous statements that she's made? She can't really answer us. She said she consulted, but no, we don't know who she consulted with, or how she consulted. There's no science to it at all. Now, what we're going to see coming out of that is more disaster. We're going to see it become worse. We're going to see the employment figures become worse, because this is an experiment that has been done for 25 years, and we can't carry on that way. What we in the Democratic Alliance want to do is real redress. We want to actually expand the workforce. We want to expand the economy. We want to show that we can do this. Now, we've done our own experiment. It's called the Western Province. The Western Province has tried in its utmost, despite some of the negative, harsh legislation. They've brought down the unemployment down to 19%. It's just below 19%, when we have what Kasatu tells us is a 42% unemployment in the whole country. Now, this is SHIP South Africa that has developed a very bad leak. So
I have to jump in there, Mr. Bagraim, because you keep saying it's an experiment that failed, because in essence, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that BBBEE has failed. Which parts of BBBEE have failed when you live in a country where the majority are black Africans? And if you're saying the numbers are harsh, how exactly are they harsh in terms of the numbers? So if you're saying there's 80% black people, then surely 80% of the workforce and companies should be exactly that.
Yes, so that's why it's failed. It should be, because we've had 25 years of this. If you've had 25 years and you keep doing the same experiment, and you're saying that the workforce is still not reflecting the demographics, then that's failure by anyone's imagination. Not a Democratic Alliance statement. That's a statement from the ANC that it's failed. And if it's failed, then there's a real problem. And if there's a real problem, you can't do the same thing again, bring it back again on a harsher fashion and say, now this is going to work. It doesn't sound right by any stretch of the imagination. We can spend the next 25 years destroying our economy even more. We don't want that. The Constitution calls for redress. We want redress. And we've shown how it can be done. And if we had at least the removal of that 15A, that we could actually then take into account the demographics of the actual province, the demographics of that industry, the qualifications, the productivity. We have problems in this country. Our productivity, for instance, is the second worst in the world. Our employment figures are the worst in the world. How do we explain that? And we explain it because of the lack of redress.
How do you explain, though, to your GNU partner, which will accuse you of being anti-transformation? In fact, the president of the ANC and the president of this country has accused the DA of being anti-transformation, because the other argument could be, well, maybe BBBEE hasn't worked not because of the actual legislation, but the nature of the global economy. There are several factors that have led to the sluggish growth of our economy, and that's got nothing to do with quotas, which are meant to be dealing with our unjust past.
Well, it's quite simple, because all our neighbors here in Africa, their economies are all improving. They're all reflecting the demographics of their country. Why is it South Africa hasn't? Why is it that we have gone worse from year to year? So it's easily explicable. And yes, there is a problem in the world, and yes, we need to tackle that problem. But we know unemployment in South Africa is the worst in the world. When you look at our neighbors that aren't as rich as South Africa, they are reflecting the demographics. And how do they do it? They don't have legislation of this nature at all. What they're doing is they're uplifting all boats. All boats are floating on the incoming stream. And that incoming stream is not coming here. There's something that's holding it back. And it can't be said that it's the business community. It is, unfortunately, the negative legislation.
Michael Bagraim.